And oh shit, we are live.
I forgot
Anyway,
to turn on my
Jason.
light. I'm gonna leave my
Okay.
light off. I'm starting to get a headache.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah. So,
So you,
we
you get me all blue.
okay. Yeah. Is it better now though? Is it a little better?
Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Okay. But thankfully, Jason McLean, you and I are going to have a very good talk. So, embrace the pain for now.
For Godzilla, I will
For
always
Godzilla.
embrace the pain.
By the way, I'm kind of pissed at you that you did a show with Dr. Dean on Godzilla. And I'm like, God damn it. We were supposed to do Godzilla, you son of a bitch.
Well, hold on. We did it more from an academic perspective, in particular the original Godzilla. Like granted, it's Godzilla as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more about the original Godzilla, and again from a more sociological
Okay.
sociological psychological perspective, at Godzilla as cultural catharsis, and
Okay.
also how that kind of ties into the ufology movement. So I
Okay.
feel like I didn't cheat on you,
All right.
and that's
Well, you and I
and
are about to have a very different conversation about Godzilla, sir. Okay. But and to introduce, okay,
yes,
I want to start off by issuing a sincere and deep apology to the paranormal cryptid community dudes. Okay, because I think you and I, Jason, both have observed that just about every cryptid dude we've ever met is a hardcore Godzilla fan.
yes,
It seems to be like a pattern. And one day, I don't remember who I was talking with. I think it was like either Duke or Ryan, Monster Radio,
yeah,
right? Like because we love Godzilla, but those
hmm
dudes love Godzilla,
yeah,
right?
they do. Yes,
Yeah,
they
they
love themselves
love
some
Godzilla.
Godzilla.
And there's some dudes in this scene that love themselves some Godzilla, right?
True.
However, you and I have a bit of a voice, and you actually have done a show on Godzilla as a Godzilla fan, and I also
hmm
speak as a Godzilla fan. But to these dudes, I do have to issue an apology, not just for myself, but also on behalf of Jason, because I think you and I are both in the same position. Because I think it was either Duke or Ryan who said to me
hmm
one time, "You can't call yourself a real Godzilla fan if you haven't seen Shin Godzilla." And you know what? There's no response to that. It's absolutely correct.
Yes,
There's no
100%
there's no
correct.
there's no comeback to that, right?
No.
So for the longest time, I felt like a fucking fraud. And I think you may have related to that too, as well, Jason McLean, because you were also
Not a
someone
fraud,
who
just someone who's very busy.
but you never saw Shin
I I
Godzilla.
I have literally been trying to watch this movie for the last 5 years, and then for whatever reason, here's the thing, Donnie. I'm a Christian. I believe in fate. I believe that all
So
things happen for a reason. The reason you and I haven't watched Shin Godzilla yet until this weekend
yes,
was because we needed to watch it
together,
together.
yes, whilst eating chips
Queso.
and queso dip. Yes,
What'd you think about it?
after the convention, that was the
Yep.
thing I was looking forward to most. Actually, was like, you know what, Jason, you and I have to rectify this. Neither of us have seen Shin Godzilla. We got to fix this because
Mhm.
otherwise we can't call ourselves real Godzilla fans.
It's true. No,
It's
it's
true.
true. But we did it while eating queso con carne.
And then we decided we are going to do a little movie review, an analysis, and a discussion on the film Shin Godzilla.
Yes.
So, with that, Jason, the ball is in your court. For those of
Yes.
you who may have not seen it yet, give us a spoilers breakdown of Shin Godzilla and your thoughts.
If you've not seen the movie, again, we sympathize, but we're about to spoil the ever loving crap out of this movie, so that's on you.
That's on you.
Time to bail right now. Very quickly, Glenn Dennison asks why we didn't have the Blue Oyster Cult song as an intro. I can honestly say, copyright reasons. That's it.
Mm.
And yes, animals were harmed in the making of my queso because I include Wolf brand chili. And so, yes, animals were absolutely harmed. They were harmed
Yes.
lovingly. Respect to make Wolf brand chili the greatest chili on planet Earth that you can buy. Homemade chili is a different thing.
Crystal J
Okay,
says that I did not harm any Bigfoot, but I may have indirectly annoyed some this past
this is
weekend.
true.
Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna have to wait for the
Yeah.
video on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Shin Godzilla.
Mhm.
Very different take on Godzilla. So again, this is the story of Shin Godzilla. Weird crap happens, and then what looks like baby Godzilla, but it's like a weird larval thing, pops up, starts destroying stuff. Blood's pouring out of its gills. Radioactive, steaming hot blood is pouring out of its gills when it's walking around in Japan. It's just destroying.
That was my
things.
favorite part, by the way.
Yeah, it really is. It's
Yeah.
really like this is the
That was
most
my favorite part.
disturbing Godzilla you'll ever see because like it has like fish eyes, like it's a giant fish eye.
It's like a fetus Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have like it has like protrusions. It doesn't even have forearms yet. Anyway, over a period of weeks, because really this movie takes place over several weeks worth of time. Godzilla is evolving into the Shin Godzilla that we see at the end. And each stage, he's growing, he's changing, he's becoming harder to kill. He is gaining powers like the atomic breath, which is just truly disturbing, that whole scene. But every step along the way, the bulk of the human action is done within the Japanese government.
Only the Japanese government.
Only the Japanese government.
Yeah, there's no love story here. There's no family drama. There's no like heroic person rescuing someone from a rubble. No, this is all just politicians, some scientists. That's it.
Screwing up every single step along the way.
Fucking up all the way.
Everything.
You're just like,
there's one guy. There's one guy who's like, why are we doing this? And honestly, my favorite part of the movie is the Japanese government officials will all be in a room. They're talking about what's happening and said, okay, we need to carry on this over here. And they leave and go to another room with another table. People are sitting behind them. They talk. And
it's like, the same goddamn people.
It's the same people. It's like you could argue maybe a few more people are there, but it's essentially the same people. And it's meeting after meeting after meeting.
It's the bureaucracy.
Showing you. Yeah, and they're showing you, like, while they're talking, Fetal Zilla, is destroying things and just stepping on people.
And you know what? You know the scene where all the boats were just being mushed down the canal?
Yes.
The director intentionally made that look like the footage from like the tsunamis that they had at Fukushima, where all the cars and all the boats were, he made it intentionally look like that. So this shit was looking like a straight up disaster, right?
Yeah.
And the effects were real good.
Oh, they were. So real quick on this movie, and again, I'll continue my narrative of the story, but essentially, this movie is designed, and we'll come. Trust me, this will come back. This was a commentary on the Fukushima event. Everyone, like, please understand, it is what, like, if you didn't know the Fukushima event had happened, you'd be lost in this. But knowing that the Fukushima event happened, and that's what this is a commentary on, makes perfect sense. And there's so much that is in this film where it's 100, like, that is pulling directly out of stuff that we saw with the Fukushima, and we'll get into more detail on that. But so there's only, like, there's this one guy who's in the government. He's lower ranking, who's like saying, hey, why are we having these meetings? We need to do something.
Yeah.
There's one, and eventually the government has screwed it so far. They're like, okay, you go create this panel of troublemakers, essentially, and figure this out.
Yeah,
So they're
because
all
they're like because we're so bogged down by bureaucracy, we basically can't do shit, right?
yeah.
Because every screw up. Okay, so it like all at once shows a bunch of characters, right? It's kind of overwhelming the number of
Mhm.
characters there are, and then
Yeah.
it's always showing you in your face like what their job title is or what their
Yes.
position in the government is,
Mhm.
and it's just a whole bunch of but it's meant to be overwhelming because it's just showing like all of these, and none of them are particularly good or bad.
Yeah.
They're just fucking
No, they're
wrong.
not.
They're just
Yeah, they're
fucking
just
wrong.
it's just the
Yeah,
inap the ineptitude of the system itself.
yeah,
So there's one guy and again in this is Donnie's favorite scene, it's my favorite scene as well, when they set up again this group of rebels, right? The room is set up and they go into a lot they show like they don't spend a whole lot of time on it, but they do spend time showing you them setting up the room, making certain the copiers are in place,
yeah,
the tables are laid out.
yeah.
They put this stuff in there like they don't focus on it for so long that it becomes boring, but they get the point across, hey, this is still the bureaucracy. Anyway, there's a point where they have but again we'll come back to it in more detail where where they have Fetalzilla has turned into Toddlerzilla,
Yeah.
and they have him dead to rights. He's
Yeah,
just
they
kind
have
of
the
sitting
attack
there,
choppers all lined up in front of it
ready to go.
with their missiles ready to go, right? And this is like still in its baby form, and they could kill
Right,
it right then and there.
and they don't because there are two civilians crossing the street nearby, and I mean, and again, this is going to come back. We get into the detail. I just want to tell the entire story first. But it's at least one older person and then one elderly person because they're being carried on the other person's back. And because of that, the Prime Minister of Japan does not have them pull the trigger because it would be bad for optics.
Mhm.
It's very clear. It's very clear that these are all political decisions. In fact, when they're talking to the experts, they're like, "We can only tell you."
Oh yeah, they had the
Yeah,
biology expert in there and everything.
yeah, and everyone's wrong every step of the way. Every politician's wrong. Although I
The
did love when they
experts
put
are
on
absolutely useless. So
completely
useless.
useless. And the reason for it is they even say, "Well, I can't give you what isn't. I don't want to give you anything that's not verified because then I'd be wrong." Everyone's useless in this film. Every politician is fundamentally useless.
Because nobody knows what to do. It's Godzilla. Like, how
Yep,
do you prepare for that?
exactly, and that's the whole point. Anyway, moving on. America does get involved. There is
Mhm.
a woman who is who's the ambassador. She's Japanese American, and they play her up real hard, particularly at the beginning of the film when she's first introduced. She
I
has this
never
very
wished for a white actor so hard in my life.
yeah.
I was like, could you have please just casted like a white person to play the American,
Mhm.
please? And apparently, see, we don't get this in the dub version, but apparently, if you listen to it in the
The
subtitle
original.
version, the
Mhm.
original, there are scenes where she's speaking English to like Americans, and her English is so bad, and you're like, come on, Toho, you could have done better than that.
Yeah. So she's supposed to be a Japanese American who's the daughter of a politician, but she is very competent.
Yeah,
Early on, they show her in like as like a in like a party girl outfit, and she has this very almost Valley Girl accent.
she's the
The
girl
way she,
boss.
yeah, she's
Yeah.
and she even says, "I always screw up Japanese honorifics, so I'm just going to call you whatever." And it's like, again, understanding Japanese culture, that's the biggest slap in the face. And the
Hmm.
thing is, she knows she's the context for her, and I do think I agree. It would have been, but I think the thing is, there's something else. There is again a lot of commentary in this between Japanese and American politics. The thing is, the fact that she is Japanese American, I think plays a huge role because it's saying, "Hey, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm pissing you off by doing this. I know I'm being stupidly rude." But the thing is, we find out as the movie goes on, she spends more time with
Hmm.
the main character. We find out, oh no, she's not this dumb. She's not
Hmm.
dumb at all. She knows everything that she's doing, and she's doing it deliberately. Her screwing up the honorifics was
Yeah.
literally her showing that she's got the biggest penis in the room.
Yeah.
That's what that
Yeah.
is. It was
Yeah.
a junk measuring contest, and she's like, "I'm the American ambassador." Bam, done.
Yep.
That's
And
what
there was
that
a lot of
was.
political commentary in that regard because the
Yeah.
film was actually focusing on like Japan's place in the geopolitical world, where they're basically like, you know, we have our self-defense force. We don't have an actual military, right?
Yeah.
But I want to turn this conversation now over to Godzilla himself.
Oh, we still need to
In
finish
this.
the actual story. Then we can get
Okay,
into the
okay,
details.
okay.
They do figure out a way to kill Godzilla, and
Mhm.
essentially, and towards the end, it's like everyone in the world's like, we're gonna have to nuke. Like it's sitting there in Tokyo because he's radioactive. He has to rebuild up power, and so he just sort of goes into a sleep mode. They figure out that if they can inject this in this coagulant into him, that he'll just stop. Essentially, they would be
Mhm.
able to stop the nuclear fission, and he'll go dormant forever. However, the rest of the world doesn't necessarily know this. They're like, we're just gonna have to nuke him right now. And of course, that's the big. Everyone's like, we can't approve them nuking Japan again. And it's like, this thing is a threat to the planet, because one of the things they realize is that this version of Godzilla, the reason he's mutating and evolving so quickly is that essentially he's a super life form, and they're like, this thing can reproduce asexually. This is our one chance to kill this creature, or we're all gone.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of conversation about.
Oh yeah, and
being nuked again.
another detail is whenever Godzilla uses his atomic breath, whatever
Yes.
spot that lands on, yo, that shit's radioactive forever.
Yeah.
So they really don't want him using that atomic breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, continue, Jason. I just want that.
Exactly. Like they point out about how bad the radiation is. Again, this is Fukushima, right? And even in the conversation, again, thinking back on it, we can touch on this again. The whole, we don't want to be bombed a third time. Or
Hey
whatever.
Rob, what's up?
Hey Rob, this still kind of goes back to the beginning of the film where they're like, well, we can't shoot because there may be civilians, right?
Yeah.
Every step along the way is we don't want to do what's really necessary because we're worried of political fallout or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they do end up stopping the radical, the guy who's like, I'm gonna do the right thing here. They do end up stopping Godzilla using the coagulant, and they use concrete pump trucks to pump hundreds and hundreds of gallons of this coagulant into Godzilla, and which is very important because again, Fukushima, that's what they were, because those concrete trucks were the ones that were pouring the concrete and water into Fukushima to try and get it to not melt down. And so the end of it, though, Godzilla ends up freezing in the middle of Tokyo.
Yeah.
Like he's stopped. Like he's essentially just done. He's this giant statue, but the last scene is they go in on his tail.
Mm-hmm.
And there are these skeletal humanoid figures emerging out of the tail. Now they are frozen as well. But essentially the theory that Godzilla was evolving into an entire species, they stopped him just before those little mini Godzilla thing, skeletal Godzilla creature, humanoid. They had tails.
No, those were human arms coming out of him.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm saying they were humanoid. These weird humanoid Godzilla things, they're frozen too. So they stopped him just before the ultimate manifestation. So that's the story of Shin Godzilla.
Okay, now a couple things here.
Mm-hmm.
We got to point out one of the most fucked up moments in that entire movie.
Yeah,
was when they finally get the green light to go full blast with the military, because half the movie is like, oh, we can't use our military. Can we use do we have authorization? Oh, where's the can we do this? Can we do that? I'm not sure we can do that. Oh, they're civilians. We can't do that. But then finally, at this point, they're just like, fuck it. Green light, whatever we got, right? And they come out with their Apache helicopters. These Apache helicopters, they unload their machine guns. Nothing. Not even a reaction. Not even like annoyed little roar. Nothing.
Yeah.
They unleash their missiles. Literally nothing. Godzilla doesn't react whatsoever. He just dead eyes. right?
Yeah.
And he's just moving forward.
This Godzilla never blinks.
He never
He has
blinks.
fish eyes. Like this, he
So
is essentially, imagine him as like some sort of mutated anglerfish. That's really what he
okay,
looks like.
let me tell you the difference between this Godzilla and the recent Godzilla movies. Godzilla, the recent Godzilla movie, like the legendary Godzilla, that thing had like emotions. It reacted to things. It would get angry, right?
He was a
It
character.
had a target, and he would
Yeah.
react, especially with like King Kong versus Godzilla. They would
Yeah.
scowl at each other.
Yeah.
This Godzilla ain't nothing like that at all. This Godzilla, his literal motivation is he basically gets up out of the water and he is marching in one direction. That's it. Beep, boop,
Yeah.
beep, boop, beep, boop. That's
There's
all
no-
he's doing.
Yeah. No reason, no
He's
rhyme.
got dead eyes. He's just looking forward and he's just moving in one direction. He's not like going around being like, fuck you, humanity, and just kicking every other building down. No, he's just moving
Yeah.
in a straight line, and whatever happens to be in his way happens to be in his way.
He's not
Right?
even going for like they've done versions of Godzilla where he's going towards nuclear power plants to
Yeah.
feed, right?
Yeah.
They don't even bother with that idea.
No.
He's just existing. It is the literal
He
manifestation
literally, yeah.
of a natural disaster. That's what he is.
Mm-hmm.
He has no motivation beyond being Godzilla.
That's it.
There's no direction. There's no emotion. The screams or his roar is a scream of pain.
It's a scream of pain, yeah.
Because he is always in pain. Again, the
Yep.
blood pouring out of the gills at the beginning. They make it very, very clear this Godzilla is in pain all
Constantly,
the time.
the whole time. Yeah. And that's it. All he's doing is just moving in a straight line. Not because I don't think Godzilla even knows why he's moving in a straight line.
No.
He's just moving in a straight line. Right. So the Apache helicopters, right? They unload. Godzilla doesn't flinch. So finally they call in the artillery batteries and they say, go for the legs. Remember that?
Yeah.
So they hit into the legs, and then finally Godzilla marching along stumbles. And it's like, oh shit, this actually hurt.
Yeah.
And then looks over at the artillery, and it's basically just like one swipe, and they're all fucking gone.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, well, that's dealt with. Back to marching. Do.
Yeah.
Right?
Gotta get my steps in.
And then finally, good old America comes in to save the day. And what did they come in with? B-2 bombers, stealth bombers.
The Mop, by the way. I love that.
The Moab. Right?
Well, no, it's not a Moab, it's a Mop.
Oh, what's a Mop?
It's a massive ordnance penetrator.
Oh,
so it's designed to, because they're like, look, this thing is taking everything. We've got a penetration bomb. We'll use that. It doesn't take it out. It does penetrate, though. It absolutely does the job.
Godzilla was not happy when he got hit by that. That's for sure.
Yep.
Because he got hit by those things, and like chunks would fly out of his back, and he's just like, "What the fuck?" And like he's in absolute pain, and it's the pain that gets him charged up. And then so when that atomic breath finally comes out, he doesn't do it to attack. It's like a reaction to the pain, is all it is, right? So at first it even starts off at like him like lurching and vomiting, right? And it comes out as like an orange flame like goo, and then finally it gets focused into this blue laser beam, and he's just like swinging around, just like writhing in pain.
Yeah, his power breath isn't something he has; it's something he creates as his evolution, and then eventually it starts coming out of his dorsal fins,
and out of his tail.
And then eventually out of his tail. But yeah, it's like when he starts, he leans over and he starts vomiting fire. Like it is his jaw distends. Like instead of just opening, like it distends out like this, and his bottom jaw opens
like the Predator.
Up like a snake. Yeah. And then he starts vomiting fire, and then eventually it gets hot enough, and then it turns into the laser. And he just starts tearing things apart. And again, then his dorsal fins start shooting lasers. Then eventually he's spitting in his tail. It's insane because he's just evolving. But again, there's no emotion behind it. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just he's just evolving to meet the threat.
Yep.
And you could argue it's clear like he is just always in pain.
Yeah.
And because humans are the cause of his pain because of the because he was, again, radioactive waste is what was feeding on, which is what turned him into Godzilla.
Well, if you look at his design, he looks like he's like a giant tumor in this movie.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the original, one of the things we miss about the original Godzilla is that he doesn't have scales. He's aquatic. So think of his skin is actually like that of a newt or a salamander. He has skin, not scales. The reason he looks like he's got scales is because he has carotenoid scarring, which is the scarring you get from radioactivity. So this Godzilla is very much based on, you were pointing this out. They took the original design for Godzilla and essentially turned him into Freddy Krueger. So essentially the red area, like you see in the picture here, that red area, it's glowing. That's essentially where his skin has been pulled apart, and that's the muscle and sinew underneath.
Exactly.
Which is why it's glowing.
As if someone had like radiation burns, you know?
Yeah. Very quickly, yes, Glenn, this was produced by Toho.
This was their comeback film. This film won Best Picture in Japan.
Yeah,
and people
it
were
deserves
like, whoa.
it deserves it. Yeah, 100%. This is basically Godzilla's Freddy Krueger as far as the design goes, and it works because, again, and by the way, his mouth, like, remember, anglerfish goes all the way back. Like most versions of Godzilla, the eyes and the mouth are sort of like, more as very reptilian, right? Nothing to, but his mouth goes like way back behind his eyeballs.
Yeah,
it's again, he has these fish eyes, these unblinking circular fish eyes,
like dead eyes.
He's just, again, at no point is there anything that tells you that this creature has any thought in its head.
No,
this is just the living manifest. He's essentially a fish that can't die and is mutating in such a way to make it immortal.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the most brutal Godzilla has ever been, but this is as good as the original one, if not.
Okay,
maybe,
wait, hold on.
I don't want to say better.
Wait.
Yeah.
So going back, I got to bring up the scene that I think you and I can both agree is the most fucked up scene in this movie. Okay. So during this whole time where Godzilla fucking explodes with the atomic breath, right?
Oh, yeah.
What's going on with the Prime Minister?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So Godzilla's heading into Tokyo. And of course, what do they do in every disaster scene or in every disaster film? The president, right, needs to get out of Washington because and so they make all the same arguments. We have to worry about the continuation of government. You need to let the governor handle this, and we'll move you somewhere else. Even our radical, I need to do the thing, right? He's even saying this, but the entire time the prime minister is saying, I need to be here for my people. Remember what we said at the beginning. None of these politicians are ever painted as evil at all,
or completely dim-witted. Like, they make a lot of bad decisions, but they're not portrayed
stupid.
as like idiots, right?
Yeah.
The prime minister, in my opinion, was the most compelling character in this whole movie.
Yes,
because in the beginning 100%. He makes some goofy ass mistakes, but you could tell he really cares about, he's really looking out for the Japanese people.
Yeah, they are, right? In the weird way, everyone's looking out for the people, but they're so worried about CYAing.
Yeah,
that and they want to do everything by the book, by protocol. They're busy talking about but this subsection here is about this, and this subsection here is about this. Instead of saying we are, I'm going to deviate to just another film, Zulu Dawn. And Zulu Dawn, two different films. They're about the British war with Shaka Zulu in the late 1800s.
Okay.
Zulu Dawn is one of my favorite movies of all time. Very, very early. Who's the guy who played Alfred in the Batman movie?
Michael Caine?
In The Dark Knight. Yeah, Michael Caine. Very early Michael Caine.
I'm gonna have to watch this.
Essentially, there were two events, and Zulu Dawn and Zulu are about those two events during this war, right? Zulu Dawn is about this one little fight. There's one little building that essentially this platoon gets caught up in, and every friggin' Zulu warrior in the damn country is there, and they hold them off. And they are fighting for their lives, and they're fighting like their lives. I mean, Zulu, on the other hand, it was done later in the late 80s. It's about the fight where they lost, and it was an entire army, and they got wiped, completely wiped. And one of the things they point out is how they're trying, like there's this scene that keeps popping up where they're going in trying to get ammunition because they're out of ammo from the ammo cart. The ammo cart says, no, I need to sign you out. I need to do this. And they're just in a queue. Like they're waiting in line. Instead of just grabbing and shoving them out, right? They're in a queue. They're doing everything properly, which is what gets them killed. That's the entire point.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they're even stupid, but they're all everyone is so entrenched in this political mindset, in this in this procedural context, that they don't realize they're fighting for their lives, and that is what kills people. So again, the prime minister wants to stay. He wants to stay there and oversee what's going on. And they tell him, no, we need to care about the government. Again, even the guy who's supposed to be the hero,
who's right all the time up to this point. Yeah.
Yeah. He's even saying, no, we need you to go. We'll go by car. You'll take the helicopter. Right after the prime minister is vaporized in his helicopter, and like half the cabinet is vaporized in the helicopter by Godzilla, it shows a picture of the office that the prime minister was in, and it's perfectly fine. If he had stayed there, and of course the message, like there couldn't be a more blatant message in the entire film, which is if he had stayed to do the job like he wanted to, like he was finally coming around to the idea of, I need to just start fighting. He would have been fine. Instead, what was he doing? He was killed because he was following procedure. He was doing what you're supposed with the government.
See, I interpreted that differently. I interpreted that as the main hero who was right all the time. Oh shit, he was wrong.
Yeah.
Right? That was the first time he was wrong. And he knew it. Because afterwards he's just like, fuck, what did I do? My cockiness got the entire government wiped.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing. Why was he wrong? Because you're right. You're like Donnie's 100% right here. And the actor does a great job of showing that the fact that he's like, I got these people killed. It's because he was doing what you're supposed to. Again, he cared about the government and the system. And that's why he was like, no, we got it. Because again, he's doing what everyone would expect you to do. Oh, you're the government. You're important. We need to save these people. And we need to make certain they have these special evacuation. But us, the lower people, we're going to go in the cars. Like, that's what got him killed. Again, or that's why the hero screwed up, was he was thinking like every other politician, which, by the way, starts popping up right after that too.
Yeah.
There's a scene that's like, well, hey, maybe you should be prime minister. He goes, no, maybe in 10 years.
Remember, you were the one who pointed it out to me, how his, like, every time he shows up on screen, like his title shows up and it gets longer and longer throughout the course of the movie.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he keeps getting longer. And the longer it gets, the more political he starts thinking. To the point where at the end of the film, when he's talking to the Japanese, the American ambassador, the Japanese chick, they start having a conversation and it's entirely political. Godzilla is in the background. Like, you need to understand, they're talking, the frozen Godzilla is in the background. And they're talking about politics the entire time. About how she's like, well, I'm going to be, because she wants to be president by the time she's 40. She's like, I'm going to be president. And he goes, oh, you mean you want me to be she's like, we work together. He goes, you mean you want, she's like, I wouldn't mind you being prime minister when I'm president. And he says, oh, you mean so I can be your puppet?
Yep. And then Godzilla's like in the background, in the distance.
The entire time they're talking about politics. The frozen Godzilla is sitting there in the background. It's, again, even the heroes there's this constant conversation about politics and their future within it. And it's almost like, well, I was like, yeah, I'd definitely run if we have a Japan left to run.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it is very, very clear the messaging in this film, because the Godzilla isn't defeated necessarily. It's something they have to live with now.
Yeah.
Which is like Fukushima. Fukushima's not gone. It's not done. You have to live with it. And comparing the whole Fukushima thing, going back to the beginning, we were talking about when, Fetalzilla turns into Toddlerzilla, right? He doesn't have the armored plating, and the Apaches have him dead to rights. Like, he's just sitting there, like, I don't know what's going on. And he's just standing there. The implication of that scene is, if they'd pulled the trigger, this would have been over right then and there. There's this implication that he would have died, but they didn't, because of two older people. They didn't want to endanger civilians, which ends up millions of civilians end up dying now because they don't make that sacrifice. Going back to Fukushima, remember the person who volunteered to go into, I forget specifically what it was, but they had to go in. There was men in their 60s were volunteering to go in to shut down the control rods. And the reason they did is because the radiation level was so high that even in protective gear, you were going to die. Yeah. And so it was the older generation that said, I don't want some young kid to die to save me. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to save my children and my grandchildren by stopping this control rod. The prime minister does not want them to pull the trigger because of these two old people. It is literally the exact reverse of what happened at Fukushima.
Yeah.
Which is, honestly, it was one of my, again, I don't have any pride in the Japanese people per se, but it's one of those moments where I was like really impressed. Pride's probably the wrong word. I was really impressed where you had these people who were, again, they were older. Like,
you were proud for them.
I was proud for them. It's like,
yeah,
damn, that's what you do. You're like, why are we sitting in some 20-year-old engineer to do this when we know he's going to die? Here's some 60 or 70-year-old dude who's like, if someone has to die, let it be me so the next generation can come on. And by the way, what happens, obviously it's a few years later, but what happens right after Fukushima on a worldwide stage, you got your C-19, your beer virus, where we shut down the world to do what? Protect. Ostensibly, it was to protect the elderly, right? We're going to destroy the younger generations for people in their 70s and 80s. Again, I'm not saying that people who are older aren't valuable, that they aren't worth it. That's not what I'm saying. But Fukushima said no, was an example where people were like, no, this is what it's supposed to be. I will sacrifice myself for the next generation.
Yes.
We don't ask the next generation to sacrifice themselves for us. I sacrifice for my children. I do not send my children out to die for me. That's what it's supposed to be. That's how you're supposed to do things. But what do? Politicians, everyone else, we send out the younger generation to die on our behalf. And that's what that was. It was the prime minister cared too much about his own political future. And so these two people who probably would have willingly sacrificed themselves for the millions who are going to die, but they don't pull the trigger. Completely reversing the sacrifice at Fukushima.
You know what? Okay. You know what I would have done if I were Emperor of Japan at that time, Jason McLean?
Okay.
I would have marched all the death row inmates into Fukushima and been like, turn this knob because you're dead anyway. At least make it count. Emperor Donny
voluntary. But this is why Emperor Donny cannot be
Emperor.
Yeah.
Oh, are you denying my powers, sir?
I am.
Okay.
I stand opposed, sir.
Yeah, Emperor Donny would be an ugly scenario. Yes. Okay. Now I'm gonna.
So moving on.
I've got a question for you, my friend.
Okay.
Question I posed to you earlier.
Yes.
If you were to write the American version of Shin Godzilla, if the bigwigs at Hollywood were like, Jason McLean, you have full story control over do Shin Godzilla, but do that the American version, do
Yeah.
your story. What would your story be? How would you do that? Describe it for me, and I'll give you my version.
Okay. First of all, it would. I kid you not when I say this. I actually did come up with a comic strip years and years ago, and one of the monsters was a mutated.
Okay,
Again, was
pause real quick.
yeah.
In the movie, they mentioned what if Godzilla landed in New York? Let's do
Yes,
New
they do
York.
say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so New York specifically. What if
Oh,
Godzilla
darn it.
just showed up in New York?
Yeah, because I was gonna do.
Okay.
I would want him to be a mutated alligator gar because I hate those things. Okay, so it's Shin Godzilla, but it's and he's heading for New York. Okay, here's the deal. I basically make it the exact same way.
Okay.
Only I am way more focused. Only I make it very, very clear the politicians are not the ones making the decisions, and it is all self-interest. Like at no point would I make these politicians actually act like they care about the people. Like there would definitely be military personnel who care.
But
There
Godzilla
would be
though.
some.
But Godzilla though.
Yeah. What about
Godzilla,
you? Like,
though.
how would I play him differently?
Or how would America as a society react to Godzilla showing up like that?
I think there would be okay. So you remember how, like in Pacific Rim, you had people who were rooting for the kaiju. I would absolutely have people running out, like tree huggers running out to greet him. Remember Independence Day? We had the people holding up the signs right underneath the destructo beams, right? That's exactly how I'd play it. I would have all these people. I would have Godzilla cults popping up, talking about how that he's he's Mother Nature's wrath upon humanity for all that. But yeah, I would probably be way more negative on the politicians and just show essentially every conversation is like instead of pulling the trigger because he was worried about the political fallout of civilians being injured, he would say, I would have one of the people telling the politicians what to do say, how much more money can we get for reconstruction if they take out if he completely levels
my
the east
version
side?
of this movie would be like telethons for like real sad somber American pride, all the music with the memorials and be like just raise some money for the Godzilla fund,
And that would have to be at the end though.
Yeah, but it's just all infomercials and people wearing like green ribbons. You know how everyone likes to wear ribbons? Like the green ribbon. We stand behind the victims of Godzilla.
Playing off of that, and this literally just happened in like the last couple days with Oprah and The Rock doing their "We Stand with Maui" thing. I'll probably have to do a quick thought on that on tomorrow. But the way worse element of that is they're going to make money off of that. Now, they're not making any money. Like, no one's donating. Everyone's like, are you people kidding us? You're two of the richest people on the planet, and you're telling me that y'all can't come up with $10 million between the two of you to help the place where you supposedly live? The thing is, with these charities, most of particularly celebrity charities, they're just they're tax dodges. That's all they are. So they're going to make money off of that. That's where it gets even worse. So I would definitely, to that idea, I would show how people were all these charities that were raised to help the victims of Godzilla were really just making money off it. But yeah, definitely the government would be like, no, we can't bomb yet because we want them to take out a little bit more of these because we could buy up more of that land.
I got a serious question for you, my friend. Okay.
Okay.
Give me your honest opinion. Really try to think this through. Okay.
Okay.
Based off this version of Godzilla, in your honest and thought out opinion, how would you think our actual military would do?
All right. Real life military against
if this version of Godzilla were to show up in America, and this was your understanding of how our military actually is and capable of,
Mm-hmm.
How do you think it would do against this version of Godzilla?
First week wouldn't go very well.
Okay.
This is one of those things that people don't usually get because we have the movie version of the military in our
Mhm.
heads, right?
Mhm.
As I choke on air.
Take your time, baby. You
Yeah.
good?
Of
As I sip my
course, I ran out of water.
Chardonnay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just pick up like, oh, well, here, let me hop into my F-18 that's fully
Mhm.
loaded and let's go. That's not how that works.
Mm.
Particularly something like a Moab or it again. It's not like you don't have just bombs laying around to drop, right? Prepping any a friend of mine was actually ordnance in the Air
Mhm.
Force. That's what he did. He was stationed in Korea for years. His joke, apparently, his favorite joke amongst other ordnance professionals was, "Hey, anytime the pilots would give him flack or whatever, he'd be like, "Hey, without us, you're just another airline."
Mhm.
It takes a long time to prep the ordnance for a plane, right? It's like anything else, and the problem is things like Moabs or again the MOP. I don't even know if the MOP is a real thing. That's what they called it. It was a massive ordnance penetrator.
Mhm.
Um, maybe we have some on hand, but then you have to deliver it to where it needs to go, and then you need to arm it. That takes time, and that would be the thing, right? It's like the first week probably wouldn't be all that. It wouldn't go all that well. Um, but we would have pulled the trigger a hell of a lot faster. I guarantee that.
Mhm.
Um, but it would have, but like getting again, it would have been about a week, and then we'd start dropping real bombs. I think we probably would have dropped a nuke a lot faster once they realized this thing's radioactive. I think they would have dropped. I think we'd drop a nuke way faster
So yeah, I
than they
kind of
did.
disagree with that actually. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like the whole time I'm just like, well, this thing clearly likes radiation. Dropping a nuke is probably just going to be like a buffet for it.
Yeah. Well, the
You know
thing
what
is,
I
though,
mean? There's no
yeah.
guarantee.
Well, so here's the thing, right? They do the traditional 55-gallon drum thing for the radio. The thing is, that's not really what radioactive waste looks like.
Mhm.
It's not green glowing sludge. It's metal rods. That's really what radioactive waste is. It is metal rods, and they're very easy to clean up. But
Mhm.
my point is, okay, we need water to live, right? We drink water.
Mhm.
You'll drown in the ocean. Being able
Yeah.
to feed on radiation is one thing. Surviving the heat and concussive blast of a nuclear weapon is a completely different thing. It ain't the radiation that kills you in a nuclear bomb. It's the fact that we've dropped the sun on you. That's what kills you.
Can I give you my opinion on what would have
Oh,
happened if
hold on.
that Godzilla?
To Danny's point, Danny says he drinks vodka. Yeah. But if I take a couple 100 gallons of vodka, light it on fire, and then throw it at you all at once, you're not going to survive it. That's my only point. It's the same thing.
I do have to agree that if that version of Godzilla were to show up like suddenly in New York and just start walking in
Mm-hmm.
this random direction, I do agree the first week or so, it's it's gonna be nasty, right? It's gonna be nasty for sure. Um, I think though it would take America probably about 2 or 3 months to take it down for good. With my understanding of how our military is, and here's why. Okay, let me
Okay.
explain it.
Okay.
So, first of all, it's not moving very quickly. So I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
people would have figured out how to like climb on top of it or like surreptitiously sneak on top of it where they have access
Mm-hmm.
to its like what would stop anyone from maybe parachuting down, landing on Godzilla's body,
Mm-hmm.
Now they have
Yeah.
full reign. This Godzilla doesn't give a shit.
Mm-mm. As long as
Right?
you're not hurt, he's very much like the Borg. If you're not a
Yeah.
direct threat, doesn't care.
Yeah. So there's that. And secondly, I feel like eventually our military forces would figure out a round that would go through Godzilla's fucking head. Something like like a magnetic railgun with a big enough projectile. Just headshot that motherfucker.
Well, but you still have to build it. Like
we have
hold on.
magnetic railguns though. The Navy has this capability.
Yes, they have it. It doesn't.
They
But
just
it has
figure out the right. I'm not saying it would be easy. I'm saying I'm pretty sure America would be like, okay, let's do the calculations. What would it take this to get a projectile to go through that head? Okay, this amount. Well, I guess we got to make this. I'm pretty sure within a few months.
It would be a laser guided bomb rather than that, because so here's the thing, right? Because for massive penetration, you want something like a bomb. We built. I was just watching this in the Fat Electrician, not to plug somebody else's channel in this, but they don't need us. He doesn't need us promoting him, but he does a great job. They talked about the bunker busters that were used in the first Gulf War, right? No, not the first, first or second. Anyway, one of the two. The thing is, they didn't have these penetrative bombs. So they designed them. They built them in like 2 weeks using the body of the bomb was actually a howitzer barrel. They literally just took the barrels, modified them, turned them into bombs in 2 weeks. It's insane what they did. It is nuts. Which goes back to the idea that the first week we would suck. Like the first week would be a bloodbath. He would just do whatever he wanted. After that, we'd shut him down a lot faster. And again, I think we'd drop.
Well, because again, Japan, they didn't have access to their military and they were not very trigger happy. America has none of those problems, right? We got none of those problems. We're pretty trigger happy and we have access to everything,
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it at a certain point they may be like, okay, we need to pull out some of the pull out the fake alien technology.
Yeah.
Although I'm sorry, hold on. This is absolutely true. By the way, Amy, everyone's first thought was head. Like every time they shoot at Godzilla in this movie, they're aiming at the head up until midway through. Like every shot is a headshot in this until they're like, okay, it's not working. Sadly, Blue Crossroads points out that first off, our government would announce that since he's attacking New York, everyone in Texas is required to wear a mask.
Okay, can I give you my version? You gave us your version of Shin Godzilla in America. Let me give you my version of Shin Godzilla in America, Mr. McLean.
Okay.
It would not be a singular movie. It would actually be a series. I'm thinking like Black Mirror.
Okay.
Like a 10-episode series.
Okay.
And basically, because Shin Godzilla is essentially like government, politicians. Yeah. It's like West Wing, right?
Yeah.
It's like the West Wing of Godzilla. So every episode would be exactly that. What's going on in the Oval Office? That's it.
Okay.
Oval Office shit, and then Godzilla. That's it, right? But then
like the Godzilla stuff is what's happening in the background.
Well, it cut to Godzilla doing shit, and then cut to Oval Office shit. Okay.
Yeah.
But each episode in the series would be the Trump administration, the Biden administration, the Obama administration, the Bush administration.
That
and
is
each episode is the administration, the Oval Office shit versus what's going on with Godzilla.
And it's how each one, it isn't like Godzilla's been around the entire time. It's like this is the first time he shows up.
Yeah.
And
the exact same scenario under different administrations.
That is okay. You know what? That's a show that needs to be made. I like that idea.
So let me ask you, Jason McLean, which administration would hold up the best against the Godzilla attack? against this Godzilla attack?
See, here's the problem with that question, because I do like the question. I'm really, really jaded, and so here's the thing. I think they'd all handle it a bit about the same, except this: Trump would tell people what to do, and they wouldn't do it. Obama and Bush and Clinton would be told what to do, and they would follow. But the thing is, again, back to my point about how the politicians themselves wouldn't actually do anything. It would be the people running. That's the conversation there. The difference is Trump would be like, "We need to kill this thing. We need to kill it now." And the office would be like, "Yes, sir. We're going to do that right now." They'd go outside, and there'd be, and the same people from the previous episodes would be there saying, "Lie to him, because we need Godzilla to take out more property for BlackRock to buy." So that would be, for me, here's the problem. I think they don't handle it the same. The problem is the people in the previous groups would do what they were told and just play their role. Trump would do what he thought was the right thing, but it still wouldn't happen because the people themselves, the people who actually do the things, would say, "No, we're doing what the real masters are telling us to do."
Can I give you my final takeaway before we end it tonight? Let me give you my final takeaway, and I want you to give me your opinion, okay?
All right.
The thing that hit me the most home for me about this film, when I really started to really think about it and analyze it and digest it, this film is an allegory for the second coming of Jesus Christ. And allow me to explain, if you will entertain me.
Okay, please do. I'm interested now. Okay,
here we go. This is something I've been thinking about when I first started watching this movie. I was like, "Oh, this is Jesus. This is the story of Christ's return." Okay. First of all, Godzilla. How is he described once they start explaining him? God incarnate. Right.
Yep. Okay.
God incarnate shows up as a result of what? Their sins. And they very clearly show their sins, all that toxic waste at the bottom of the ocean.
Okay, yeah.
Right? The whole idea of Godzilla is he is just moving. He's not out to fuck with people. He's not being mean. He's nothing like that. Yeah. He's just doing what he's doing. Right?
Right.
God incarnate shows up as a result of your sins, not because he fucking hates people who don't deserve to be saved, because it's just what needs to happen.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Once he shows up, the leadership of man, it's a clusterfuck. They're like, what the hell is going on? You know? Meanwhile, this incarnation of God is just doing his thing as a result of the sin of man. Again, not because he's angry, because it's just what he does. Right?
It's what needs to happen.
It's just what needs to happen. Exactly. And as he's going along and as he's trotting along, right? He's just he's not trying to destroy Tokyo. He just lets loose that atomic breath as a result of the damage he received from man. Right?
Yeah.
And then what happens at the end after he gets frozen? You see like those arms being extending from the tail, right? And those plants, and you're like, oh, he was supposed to usher in a new world as a result of the sins of the previous world. That's the second coming of Christ.
You know what I love about you, Donny?
What?
You're like a unicorn.
Okay.
You find you look at things in such a unique way.
All right.
That's what I love about you. I think I think it's a bit of a stretch, but at the same time, I don't think you're entirely wrong as a metaphor, because I mean, clearly the idea that Godzilla was a response to mankind's sin and crimes, right? That's 100% there.
Mhm.
That's what it is,
Yeah.
right? About the arrogance of man, and again about how human government is inherently flawed.
Mhm.
So I mean, you're not, like you said, you're not wrong. But I love how you look at it, Donnie. That's why I love you.
Anyway, with that, we are signing out, and good night, folks.
Oh, can I say one thing before you push the button?
Are you sure?
Or
Please
yeah,
do.
just one
By the
tiny
way,
thing.
if we go long, it's on you.
I know.
Okay.
But
Go as long
just
as
one
you
last
want.
thought.
Okay.
One last thought. One of my favorite things that they do in this film, at least for the English dub, I don't know if they did it in the original Japanese version. So obviously we call him Godzilla in English, but his proper name is Gojira, right? They literally do the opposite of the thing that of the gag that they did in the '98 one with Matthew Broderick, where the Japanese whaler is saying Gojira, and then the idiot news reporter says Godzilla.
Oh man, that shit hurt, man. Oh,
Which was my favorite. And of course, the woman who actually did the reporting and pulled it all up was like, "It's Gojira, you
okay.
moron!" But
Actually,
in this film, they reverse it, and where the guy who did it called it Godzilla, and they're like, "We're going to call it Gojira." It's a reversal of that shtick. I love it.
Okay, before I let you go, I got to bring up something. You bring that shit up. Let me bring this up then, Mr. McLean.
Okay.
I don't remember which. I think it was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, the original one.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait, the one where Mechagodzilla was brought by the aliens, or the one where the humans
the aliens. Okay.
I'm back, just making certain, because they
beyond the aliens.
Everything, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. To me, Godzilla movies are essentially, throughout the course of their history, are two movies in one, right? There's the human side, and then there's the Godzilla side, right?
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And depending on so Godzilla's doing his shit, fucking shit up, but then there's a human side, and depending on the movie, it's all different, right? Some of it's like a rescue story, political story, military, whatever, right? There's all these stories. There's a hero, there's a heroine. Sometimes there's a romance, whatever.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, in terms of some Godzilla movies for me were like great, the Godzilla parts, but then the human parts were a fucking bummer because they would slow the movie down. And I was like, 100%. They're not that interesting. Right?
I feel your pain, Donnie.
Okay. Give me your opinion on the best Godzilla movie in terms of the Godzilla action, but also the worst human action, where it was like the most disparate for you.
Best Godzilla action, worst human action?
Yeah. The most disparate, where it was like,
that is, there's so many. Okay, that's all right. Oh, okay. I want to say, we're sticking just to Toho, right?
Okay. I recently rewatched Godzilla King of the Monsters, the legendary one with Godzilla versus like the modern
that's what I'm
remake of Ghidorah, right?
Yeah.
I'm watching that movie. I'm enjoying the action. I'm like, yo, this shit's cool. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like, oh, Millie Bobby Brown, get the fuck off my screen. Cut back to Ghidorah.
It's
you know what I mean?
The last two. That's what I'm saying. It's the last two. Again, King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong. The human story sucks. It's the worst part. But here's the thing: you can say that about a lot of Godzilla films, but definitely the legend. That's what I'm saying. Like, did you want me to limit? Because if you open up for everything, straight up, it's the last two legendary films. Those were the worst human element stories where they had the best action. That's it, 100%. Not even a question.
Can I tell you, in my opinion, the most ridiculous one was the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla because of the aliens. And the reason why that shit was so goddamn ridiculous to me was like, oh, I didn't realize aliens looked exactly like Japanese people, but with like visors. I was like, this is what aliens look like? They're just like Japanese
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I'm like,
See, here's
good job though on your alien. You know what? You know what I'm talking about, Jason
I know.
McLean.
I know. Well, but okay, so here's the thing though. I loved that because I really appreciate sort of like the old. I like old sci-fi because it was cheap, right? They didn't have the money, which is why and so I like the fact that things were like the new Star Trek. Like I don't. One of the elements I don't like about new Star Trek is they have all this money, and so it's everything's over the top, everything's massive, everything's big, it actually for me damages the credibility. The idea of that like Star Trek where everything's cheap, so they didn't have a lot of actually lends to the credibility of the fact they're on this spaceship in the middle of nowhere, right? You go to this planet, it's like, well, you know, everyone's like, well, if it's the future, why is everyone doing stuff primitively? Well, because you don't have access to Earth, right? So I kind of I really have a soft spot for those old movies where your alien is literally a dude in a silver jumpsuit with a visor. Like I love that because it's so campy, but they were doing the best they had with what they had, and I really love that because it makes okay. Perfect example. Which is better, the original trilogy, the original Star Wars trilogy, or the prequels? We don't even talk about the last three. It's clearly the originals. Why? Because they couldn't do everything they wanted to do. As soon as George Lucas could do anything he wanted, he did anything he wanted. Creativity requires restriction. And if I can't, Babylon 5, right? The reason they use CGI, and they were the first ones to do it, was because they didn't have the budget for miniatures and models the way everyone else did. So they got creative, and that creativity allowed them to do a really amazing story. That's why I kind of look at that stuff and you're like, yeah, it's stupid, it's really campy, but I love it.
Well, that's how I
what
see
it represents.
Yeah, I see it the same way. Exactly the same way. Like you try to appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
You revel in the joy that it brings, regardless of its credibility. You know,
yes,
that is what it means to be a pro wrestling fan. That is what it means to be Zen. And with that, oh, by the way, this is a pro Buddhist show. By the way, Jason, you just promoted Buddhism.
No,
Fuck you. All right, we're heading out. Peace.